Hey everyone, and thank you so much for clicking on this video. My name is Justin, and today is the eve of NHL free agency. In my opinion, the hockey calendar year has some notable points, some exciting points. Obviously, the season start, the playoffs start, especially when the Leafs are involved for myself, and NHL free agency. It's always a very exciting time of year, and this year in particular, as well as what we had last year, with the flat cap scenario, with teams being in a pinch with their contracts, this year is more unpredictable than ever, and I can't wait to find out who goes where, what value, and what Kyle Dubas does for the Toronto Maple Leafs come tomorrow. You see it a lot more in other leagues, especially the likes of like the NBA, where players will leave their teams quite frequently, at least the higher named players, and go to another team, and it just makes these massive headlines. Well, you don't really get that in the NHL, typically speaking, just with the culture of the league, but this year might be a little bit different. And some trades with some notable players that we might not have seen in previous years are definitely going to occur this year as well. We've already seen it just right now. Marc-Andre Fleury has moved to Chicago. Wow, that's a crazy move. But also we saw Seth Jones, we saw Ryan Ellis, we saw Ristolainen, Reinhart, lots of big deals already, and I don't see them stopping anytime soon. But with free agency, again, the unpredictability of it, the uncertainty, you never know what's going to happen next. You never know what player is going to go to which team. There's always speculation and virtual certainty on some players, but until the contracts are signed, you just never know. And to that point, I am very excited to see what the Toronto Maple Leafs will do in free agency. Now, Kyle Dubas had a couple press conferences recently, and he expressed a little bit of what they internally are planning on achieving in free agency leading up to the season and in the next couple of hours. And obviously, goaltending is the main priority right now. We've got a lot of things we need to work on in the off season here, but goaltending, we need a competent goalie, as Kyle Dubas stated, to support Jack Campbell. Now, I don't know if they're looking at a number one and Jack Campbell's the backup. I don't know if they're looking at a tandem. I don't know if they're looking at just a competent backup and letting Jack Campbell with the reins. We don't know that. It will depend on, I guess, who's available and to what number we're planning on spending. But we did see Chris Driedger sign with the Seattle Kraken earlier this offseason at $3.5 million per year. And I would say that that's roughly where the Leafs would be looking at spending. I know that there's also the report that we're actively looking at Darcy Kuemper out of Arizona. I would absolutely love that. I think of all the goalies available, I want Darcy Kuemper the most. However, he's not a free agent. He's got 1 year left on his deal. You would need to make a trade and lose assets to Arizona. Obviously, that could actually be a good thing because you could relieve a contract off of your books, remove a roster spot, and save some cap space if you were to send a player back in that deal. But what are they asking? They're likely asking a premium because Darcy Kuemper is on the radar on lots of teams. However, if you don't get Darcy Kuemper, there's a lot of great notable goaltenders available in free agency that I could see us spending 3.5 or even well less to get a competent player to support Jack Campbell. Hypothetically, you spend $3.5 million on a goaltender. Well, that duo right there between them and Jack Campbell is already the sum of what we spent on Frederik Andersen over the last 5 years. So that's a success in itself. But it also leaves $6 million in cap space for the rest of the team. Now, where do we need to address? In my opinion, the defense still needs some work. However, we've got 7 guys already locked into contracts. We've got Riley, Brody, Muzzin, Hall, Sandin, Dermott, who I expect to be in the lineup because at $1.5 million, you're not healthy scratching him. And then you've got Liljegren as your 7th defenseman. And so unless they're moving one of those players, our defense is set. And the sentiments that Kyle Dubas had stated during his press conferences was that the defense was notably better last year, which they objectively were, and that he wants to run back the same D course. So I don't anticipate that being changed at all. So that leaves the forward group. What can we address? Well, the left side is definitely where we need the most help. We've got some players that can play on the left side, but more as a support bottom 6 role and not so much as a first or second line left winger, especially with the absence of Zach Hyman leaving in free agency, very likely, but they've already notified the Leafs that he will not be returning. I see Nick Robertson definitely stepping into the lineup next year. You absolutely need him to because he's on that entry-level contract and he's at the point of his development that I think he needs a good shot at starting on the team. Maybe he doesn't finish on the team if he doesn't produce like we want him to, but he needs to start on this roster. And for me personally, I would like to see him in the top 9. I don't want to see him on the 4th line. He needs some exposure, and his game is a scoring role. He needs to be with some players that can support that and not so much of a checking defensive unit. So I would like to see him ideally on the 2nd line with Nylander and Tavares, or on the 3rd line if they need to put him a little bit lower. But that leaves us with Pierre Engvall, Ilya Mikheyev. Those aren't really guys that should be on the 1st or 2nd line. Yes, they can do it. I wouldn't like to see it. I would like Pierre Engvall probably on the 3rd or 4th line, or sent down in waivers and sent down to the Marlies and throw his contract under there. But Ilya Mikheyev, we've seen him be able to support on a top 2 line, but that's really not his role. So what should we do? Obviously, that's our focus. In free agency, we have $6 million to go out and spend on forwards, left wingers that can play in our top 6. Now, I don't think we need to spend all $6 million on that. In fact, I would very vouch against that. I don't like the philosophy of spending it all on one spot. We've done that already in 4 of our offensive players. So I think 2 support players at about $3 million should do perfect. You've got Matthews, Marner, support player at about $3 million. Tavares, Nylander, and either Robertson or another support player. And then you've got the 3rd line pretty set with Wayne Simmons, Alex Kerfoot if they like to keep him. You've still got Adam Brooks, Jason Spezza, Kerfoot, Engvall. So we've got pieces there that we can round out the bottom 6. We just need to pick up some guys in free agency that can really support that. Again, though, I really don't know what to expect here. I would think that that's the focus of the Leafs. I would think usually Kyle Dubas is very active in free agency, but this year there's not much leeway in what we can do unless we do make a deal. But there's only a couple roster spots that we really need to fill on the forward group. I'm interested to see who he is setting his eyes on as a free agent target and who he ends up selecting to play with Matthews and Marner. With those 2, you really don't need a superstar. You just need a really good support piece like Zach Hyman was for us for years. So that should be the objective there. I think that if you enter the season with a little bit more cap space than you originally thought you would, let's say they only spend $4 million in free agency and go into the season with a $2 million buffer, well, at the deadline, that's exponentially more. So I think that should actually be the game plan, but we'll have to wait and see for tomorrow to find out exactly what we're planning on doing. So with that, who are you most excited to see in unrestricted free agency sign with any team? What do you think the big names are that are going to leave their teams? I know Landeskog is obviously a big discussion with Colorado versus leaving. So where do you see him going? And where do you think that Kyle Dubas is going to spend his money on this roster? Who do you think will pick up? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know. And well, tomorrow, again, very exciting time of year. I'm very much looking forward to it. Hope you are too. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.